Good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. The government will not compromise on defending the country's sovereignty and will never tolerate any similar demands from any parties. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim said this in response to Philippines' claims over Sabah.
Tentu rakan-rakan bangkitkan tuntutan Filipina ke Sabah. Kerajaan Malaysia telah buat kenyataan tegas tidak betul ansur 1 inci tanah air kita. Tidak mungkin kita terlibat dalam apa-apa perundingan yang mempertikai hak dan kedaulatan negara.
Nevertheless, Anwar said the diplomatic relationship between Malaysia and the Philippines remains good, and he himself still maintains a very good and close relationship with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Prior to this, a video went viral on social media, containing baseless, misleading content disputing the sovereignty of the state of Sabah. The Foreign Ministry has responded to the claims, reaffirming the government's long-standing position that Sabah has always been an integral part of Malaysia. The new regulations for social media and internet messaging services will not curb freedom of speech in Malaysia. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim reaffirms that instead it is to tackle the spread of crime and harmful information online.
Urusan digital, cyber dan media sosial itu digunakan umpamanya untuk mendera orang sehingga menyebabkan ada yang membunuh diri. Ada yang menyebabkan salah guna dari segi memperalatkan anak-anak kecil untuk urusan dagang seks. Apakah ini diwajarkan? Ada scam yang telah mencecah lebih 2.5 bilion ringgit. Scam maknanya orang ditipu menggunakan kemudahan media sosial.
The MCMC announced on Saturday that social media and messaging services with at least 8 million registered users in Malaysia must apply for a Class Application Service license under the Communications and Multimedia Act 1998. The regulation will take effect from August 1st, with the licensing requirement enforced from January 1st next year.
In other news, flights at the Sultan Abdul Aziz Shah Airport in Subang are subject to a curfew and can only operate between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Transport Minister Anthony Loh says no midnight flights are allowed there.
According to him, the curfew takes into consideration that the airport's surroundings are residential areas. He said this after announcing that 6 airlines will resume narrow-body aircraft operations from August 1st, involving AirAsia, Firefly, SKS Airways, Transnusa, Batik Air Malaysia and Scoot. Previously, all jet operations were moved to Kuala Lumpur International Airport KLIA since 1998. Loh said the airport was currently limited to handling only propeller-driven aircraft, but following improvements for the interim jet operations, the apron was reconfigured. He added that the interim phase of resuming jet operations will see the airport's passenger capacity increase from 1.5 million passengers annually to 3 million.
Setting up a National Data Commission will go a long way towards improving trust, compliance and policy making in the country's digital ecosystem. However, there are potential pitfalls the government has to watch out for in the implementation. Farhana Sheikh from Aziz Malaysia shares her thoughts on how the Commission can stimulate a more thriving digital economy.
Because in today's complex data environment, there is a need for a multifaceted and agile approach, I think, which could plug gaps or address issues in this space. Furthermore, as the country actually gears towards greater adoption of technologies like AI, a commission that could leverage on industry collaborations, feedback from consumers, as well as strengthen the government's governance environment is much needed. Thus, this may feed into your question if the data commission is actually is something specific for Malaysia. And I think there are actually pros and cons to the idea, especially if the outcome is meant to be an effective data commission, which ends up creating the safer ecosystem that you're looking for, that also has that's a foundation for the thriving digital economy, and the type of but could actually still maintain compliance to legislation.
She says a data commission would encourage better multi-stakeholder partnership and greater information sharing.
It could also have positive spin-offs in trust building, which can improve compliance and strengthen mechanisms for policy making between ministry, commission, and industry members. I think the second part that we can actually also consider is that it can actually close the gap for consumer reporting mechanisms, especially when the digital ecosystem we need today requires transparency and also a feedback mechanism. In some places, it may also close things like the power distance between like a consumer platform-based reporting mechanism, how they could actually report to larger corporations, because some of these corporations may actually not reside in Malaysia. Thus, it can be a concern, especially for data and privacy related matters.
Farhana also highlighted some of the concerns surrounding the idea of a national data commission.
For instance, the mandate of the commission would have to be clear, as ambiguity between having a commission as regulator, or whether they are actually going to be regulator and industry promoter, or regulator or industry promoter, could spell out their tasks very clearly, or it would actually not be clearly. Additionally, the powers accorded to the commission should also be clear. Examples from other parts of the world have actually highlighted how a framework or response could be useful. For instance, if the commission actually chooses to respond, they would actually be able to articulate the reason why they have actually taken this course of action, because the commission's toolkit can actually consist of many different tools, and therefore the clarity and the transparency of why they have actually taken a specific approach would actually strengthen, I think, the transparency behind the actions, which could also hold the commission accountable and actually improve like the trust ecosystem. I think lastly is perhaps about that, or perhaps the part that is a bit difficult to navigate and stuff that we would actually need greater clarity on, is actually in terms of the intersection of enforcement, institutional jurisdiction, and the complex data environment. For Tribito, like technologies such as AI could have both data security and cybersecurity issues. And this may actually complicate responsibilities, especially if the data commission is specifically for data related matters. How would a complex technology like AI be approached when you're actually trying to govern these types of intersecting technologies?
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more. Welcome back. At least 92 people have been killed, with hundreds more still missing after heavy rains triggered landslides in the southern India state of Kerala. Rescue operations are underway but are being hindered by continuous rain and the collapse of a bridge.
The landslide struck hilly areas in the Wayanad district in the early hours of Tuesday. A bridge connecting the several areas in the district has collapsed, isolating some places and making it difficult for rescue teams to reach trapped families. India's army said it had sent more than 200 personnel to the area to assist security forces in search and rescue efforts. Local hospitals are treating at least 70 injured people, and around 250 have been relocated to rescue camps so far. Wayanad, a hilly district which is part of the Western Ghats mountain range, is prone to landslides during the monsoon season. Wayanad and neighboring districts have been on alert due to the forecast of heavy rains. Schools and colleges have been closed in 10 of 14 districts in the area.
Meanwhile, over in northern England, a 17-year-old boy has been arrested for murder and attempted murder following a knife attack that killed 3 children and wounded 10 others. Among the injured, 6 youths and 2 adults are in critical condition and are being treated in hospital.
The children were attending a Taylor Swift-themed dance and yoga workshop in Southport when the suspect walked in and attacked the students. The 2 adults were injured while trying to protect the children in the room. Police say the attack was not being treated as terror-related and that the suspect's motive remained unclear. They added that they are not looking for any other suspects. Describing the incident as a horrific event, Labour MP for Southport, Patrick Hurley, announced that a vigil will be held for the victims tonight.
In other news, the United States will provide $500 million in funding to the Philippines, says U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He was in Manila with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin as part of an Asia-Pacific tour to strengthen Washington's latticework of alliances aimed at countering Beijing. Blinken and Austin met with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who has taken a strong stand against Chinese actions in the South China Sea. China claims 90% of the sea as its sovereign territory. Blinken has described the military financing as a once-in-a-generation investment to help modernize the Philippine Armed Forces and Coast Guard. The additional funding is part of the $2 billion in foreign military financing approved by the United States in April. At the same time, about 24 Filipino activists burned a mock U.S. flag and condemned the leaders' meeting as an act of further escalating tensions in the region.
It will lead to intensified basing of the U.S. in the Philippines. It will heighten tension in the region. The U.S. is putting forward an agenda that is contrary to our stand for peace and freedom in our country.
The latest high-level U.S. visit follows a series of escalating confrontations between Philippine and Chinese vessels in the disputed waterway that have raised concern that Washington could be dragged into a conflict due to its mutual defense treaty with Manila. The Olympic men's triathlon was postponed just hours before it was due to get underway after inspection found that pollution levels were still too high for athletes to safely swim in. This is a setback for Olympic organizers who had repeatedly assured that the sun would be safe for the event.
Organizers said heavy rain in the French capital on Friday and Saturday had worsened the pollution in some areas of the river. The men's event will be delayed by 24 hours and will take place immediately after the women's race on Wednesday. However, this delay raises ongoing doubts about the safety of swimming in the river, a concern that has persisted for months leading up to the Olympics. Paris authorities have promised to make the Seine swimmable as a key legacy of the Games. Over the last decade, 1.4 billion euros has been invested to clean up the Seine, including in wastewater infrastructure to contain sewage and minimize spillage into the waterway. Despite these efforts, heavy downpours still overwhelm the city's underground drains and sewage system, increasing concentrations of bacteria like E. coli and Enterococci.
That wraps up AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.